in the kingdom. So, Pastor Jamie, I want to ask you to come, and we thought somebody may have questions, and do our best to answer any questions that you may have. We've lost a microphone. Yeah, the woman always has to come and help. He's lost over there in that. Is that shirt pink? Is it? What is it? Oh, orange. Okay, I'm colorblind. I didn't know. Okay, yeah, he looks good.
Sonny Crockett.
Peach.
Sonny Crockett. Linda, if you don't mind, maybe turn up the lights. I want to see faces this morning. One thing we have not discussed that he said this morning, because I reached back and tapped one of our elders on the leg. I said, that's us. That's what we've been talking about for the last 4 or 5 months. Pastor Oldfield made the comment that a year ago they said it's time to reset. And you've heard me say that from the front. That back in November of last year, we recognized as the leadership it was time to kind of hit the reset button and change some things. And as Pastor Oldfield talked about systems, that is one thing that I have learned over the last several years, is that churches begin to grow and excel off of the proper systems and foundations put into the congregation. And as the congregation grows, the systems and the foundations and things need to change in order to continue to grow. That CrossPointe, that has been our weakness, is we grow and when we drop, and then we grow and then we drop. And it's been this kind of unending cycle for the last 5 or 6 years. And now we have an opportunity to join hearts and to join ministries with a very familiar ministry. Again, serving on staff at the Potter's House, minus 2 of the staff members that are relative. Well, they're not new. They've been there about 8 years, but they came after we ended up coming to Springfield. Deidre and I have a relationship with the entire staff. So there is great familiarity there between us and them. But now here's an opportunity for us to join a ministry that is willing to show us those systems. In other words, they've been through the processes of growth and conflict and growth barriers, and now they're saying, let us help you. Let's join together, and let's get you to fulfill the mission that God has called you to, which is to bring people in, to train them, to raise them up, and to send them out through multiplication. And so I just want your heart to connect with that this morning. And I know that there has to be some questions. We mentioned last week after service, if you have some questions and you would like to talk, call the office this week and let us talk with you. And I got one phone call. So I had to make some calls and talk to some individuals and ask what their thoughts were. But we want to allow you an opportunity to ask some questions this morning. So if you'll shoot your hand up rather than yell it out, then it won't be chaotic and there'll be some order to it. Are there any questions this morning that we could answer for you, or any concerns we could address? Yes, the elder gentleman in the middle. Thank you. That's good. Now, next, another question.
Thank God I'm still alive, all right? And secondly, thank God I'm not the pastor. I enjoy what I do. But I just felt like I really needed to say this. Pastor Oldfield, thank you so much for having this burden and this vision and allowing us to become part of something much larger than we are, and for providing us with the information how to. Being a pastor, I could have been a much larger church if I had what this church is having the privilege. If somebody had taken me under their wing and said, now that you're at this level, I'm going to show you how to go a little higher and win more souls. Isn't that what it's all about? Yeah. Somebody said to me one time in pastoring, because I was up pushing and trying to grow. And they made a statement, we're big enough. We're one big family. I looked at them and I said, when every soul in Clark and Champaign County has been saved, then I agree we're big enough. But until there's one lost person still out there, then we need to try to get them. And I'm just sitting here kind of overwhelmed, really, that you would be willing to do this for us. And I appreciate that. And personally, I just want to say thank you so much for this outstanding privilege and opportunity that we're going to have to grow this church. And obviously, this building's not going to hold us. That's pretty obvious, you know. So, Godrin, Doug, get ready. We're going to do something else. But thank you very much, Pastor, and God bless you and your church for being willing to do this. I think it's a great thing.
Well, I think if you've been with us any amount of time, you know that is the heart of the leadership here, is to reach souls. And I think the beautiful thing about this church is just the fact that we all come from very different backgrounds, and we've been willing, we've had a heart to just say, be who you are. And, you know, there's not a lot of time to evangelize. There's not a lot of time to win souls. Jesus is coming. That's the fact. Jesus is coming, and he's coming soon. And so when we all get to heaven, we can argue doctrines and theologies, and we can spend eternity doing that. But right now, we need to focus on getting people connected to Christ, getting their lives to change, and getting them discipled, and getting them back out into the harvest field to help us and to help the kingdom continue to grow. Anyone else? Dennis.
Pastor, thank you very much for coming to sharing with us today. One thing really you said is really important to me, and that is that you talked a little bit about international missions. And I think in my time as a Christian that I really come to believe that international missions and having a heart for international missions is a big part of what we should be concerned about. And I know you mentioned you had 2 international missions. We have one that we're actually working with very strongly now, and we've committed to a second one. And I'd kind of like to hear your thoughts on making sure that continues to be a very much a big part of this church, is the support of those missions. Second thing, on a different side, here in Springfield, I think one of the biggest problems we have in Clark County and Springfield is this: we condemn ourselves as being this horrible place. And it's a mindset that we have here that Springfield's this worst place in the world to live. And the truth of the matter is, this is a great, great place. And how will you help us overcome that? It's the second question I would have.
Well, let me answer the
And
first.
we've only been voted the saddest city in America 3 years in a row.
Okay.
So good luck.
Well, let me speak to the first part of that. Where are the missions? Where's the focus of the missions you're speaking of?
Philippines, and then France. We're getting ready to help church planners in France.
Okay, I'll tell you what we do. We have each month we have a different focus, a different outward focus, and so this particular month. We're raising money for Bibles for children around the world. Then it may be for another, as needs arise. And then I think once a quarter we do Destiny Village. To answer your question, what I would think, I'm thinking let's go to Manila. I'd like to go see, or have somebody go see, so we can understand if it's in Manila or wherever it's at in the Philippines or in France, where we would begin to support those ministries as well. I wouldn't see that as a change. I would think that would become part of what we're doing as well, because we're very interested in that. And I can tell you this, when we started giving to missions really beyond the church and around the world and even around the country, God started blessing us financially. I mean, we built we went into a major building program in the middle of a recession. I still look back on that, and we've been in a new sanctuary a year and a half. But that's how the Lord led us, and so that's what we did. But I am convinced that the financial stability of the church is directly connected to our willingness to give outside of the church to the work of God around the world. So to answer your question, no, I would see us coming along and enhancing that, not trying to discourage that. The second question, I look at things like this. The Bible said in Ephesians 5 and 8, you were sometimes darkness, but now you're light. Walk as children of light. And I think one of the problems with many folks that go to church is not just necessarily the community they live in, but it's the mindset they live in. And I think a lot of times people are, they're consumed with their present trouble. They're consumed with their pain. They're consumed with their struggles. They're consumed with their fear of what might happen tomorrow or next week or next month. And because that's the world we're living in. There's a lot of negative things going on in the world today. But we're called to walk in a different way. And I think as a church begins to understand, and a lot of that comes through training, a lot of that comes through intentional discussion about such things. I mean, the Bible said that we're just passing through this world. We're just pilgrims. Our conversation, our citizenship's in heaven. And I think when you start living that way and you start recognizing, my father died about 6 weeks ago. He was 90 years old, lived a good life, loved my mother for 60 years, clear-minded, strong in his body when he died. And he taught me and my brother, when we were 5 years old, he got saved. He's taught us about Jesus Christ, about walking with him, about loving him, but he's got a plan for our lives. I can remember sitting with my mother and telling her when he died, he had a stroke, just a horrible stroke, and died a week later. And I told my mother, I said, you guys taught us that this whole thing about Jesus Christ and about faith in God. And I said, because of that, we'll see him shortly. And I believe that. And so what I've come to believe and understand is I don't have to live in the despair of the culture around me, that I'm walking to the beat of a different drum. I'm going to a different place. I've got something different on the inside of me. And I think if the church, if the people sitting here today that know Christ understand really, truly what that means, not just on a Sunday, and then we disperse all around this area and this region, and you walk into a donut shop, and there's this lady sitting behind the counter, the cashier, and she's just doing the humdrum of her life, and maybe she's struggling she's a single mom, or maybe she's got this other issue, and there you come. And I've been talking to our church about this for the last several months since we got into this year, that we're light. And so we just need to come in with a smile, and just like I was telling you about the lady that works at Olive Garden, just a conversation, and in her heart, people today, that pain is just below the surface. And if you just show a little kindness to them, it's amazing to me today how people just open up and tell you their life story. And so I think it's more from the inside out than the outside in. And I think when we as believers understand who we are and what we're called to do in this world till Jesus comes, that everywhere we go, there's light. And what'd you say it was, the saddest city? So it may be the saddest city, down the road in that little side street in the field. But wherever you go, and wherever I go, wherever anybody that knows Christ goes, it's the gladdest city. And so then we just start communicating. That's, in essence, that's what the church is supposed to be about anyway. And I don't know if that solved that problem or not, but that's how I look at that.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody different? Anybody else? Rob, go ahead.
Could you kind of explain to the church of what it would mean we have a lot of young people here, and I had seen it before in our other church with Pastor Nolan Shirley, how he had helped our kids and other kids there, what it meant to them to have these different programs and that the church offers, and I think it'd be a great opportunity for the young kids that we have here, what it can do for them.
Well, we have obviously, Pastor Jamie and Deidre have a lot of root and background in youth ministry. We have very gifted staff and the staff that serves with them as it relates to children and youth ministries. We have a very active young adult ministry. What I believe, our culture is a lot different than it was just a few years ago, and with social media and what access that the culture has to our young people, and so it's a different world. And if I'm going to be real honest with you, we can't compete with that. We don't have the money to compete with that. We can't compete with the malls. We can't compete with the bright lights and other things. But this is what I know. This is what I believe. I believe if we can bring young people to the realness of the presence of Jesus Christ, to where their life is just fundamentally transformed, the world cannot begin to compete with that. And so I think from the backdrop of that, we do a lot of things that are socially geared to where they can come together and be together in all those different age groups. But I think there has to be a systematic approach to plant for instance, we had a thing called Awaken Columbus here the last, I think it was Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this past week. And it was youth, and the first night at our church, there were some older folks there and a lot of people there. But in that process, one of my sons called me and said that my youngest son has been laying over in the floor, in the corner, praying, and the weeping and the Spirit of God touching him. It was a father. I'm thinking, that's what he needs. That's what he needs. Now, he loves to have a good time, and he's out. But I'm thinking to myself, if he has that encounter, and that encounter is real, and it changes his life, then when he gets up from there and he goes out here somewhere and temptations and things begin to draw him, it's not going to be able to hook him. And if it's real to him, and it is, I see him reaching out to other young people, saying, "Come on," he's bringing them to youth group. So, to answer your question, I think I'm in a lot of ways I'm old school. I surrounded myself with a lot of young people that help me, but I have never gotten away from the fact that if we can get people to Jesus Christ, then the path forward is not near as complicated. And so, we have a lot of strategies and a lot of ministry ideas, and they do a lot of things throughout the year. But to me, it comes down to that realization of the Spirit of God fundamentally changing who they are. But again, we have a lot of things that we do. And if I might also add, I would envision, if it is the will of the church and the will of God, most importantly, and we move forward with this, I would see joint efforts of young people coming together, children's ministries coming together. I would even see, and if we plant a third church and you got 3 involved, I would see Deidre bringing this praise team and the band to Columbus, and maybe we would send our praise team and band over here on a Sunday, and have that kind of interaction, because we're going to be one. If we do this, we're going to be one. And so I see that kind of interaction, not just with the young people, but in every. We have a dynamic senior adult ministry as well. In all these areas, I see an interaction.
And even in the context of outside the local church, part of what Deidre and I grew up into was that our youth group and then the youth groups we ended up pastoring were able to be involved in ministries on a much larger scale as well, on a state level, where all the churches in the state came together for summer camps, and that door is open for our kids to be involved in, to come together with 300, 400, or 500 kids in the summer, to go to what we called Winterfest is still around, and that's all around the United States. We went to the one in Knoxville that had about 22,000 teenagers there, and there's just, if you've never been in an arena with over 20,000 teenagers. If you can get over the smell of the sweat socks and, things like that, but to be a part of an atmosphere where over 20,000 teenagers are worshiping, that's an awesome atmosphere, and that door becomes available. And then things like teen talent through the organization, and Deidre and I at the Potter's House, Deidre led a group. I think she had 11 teenagers that she put together a little vocal group, and these 11 teenagers competed and won and went on a national level and took runner-up on a national level. And because of that, some of them were exposed to colleges that are Christian liberal arts colleges, that are music schools. Some of our vocalists caught the ear of the people from those institutions. The thing about Springfield, and I'm involved a lot with him at Emmanuel, there's no other college but Cedarville. And I'm not knocking Cedarville. Cedarville is a great university, but there are other Christian universities out there that we can expose our kids to, because Cedarville may not be where God wants a particular kid at. They may not offer what area of ministry that a particular kid is going to. So, gosh, we get to double our capacity by exposing them to Cedarville and to Lee University down in Tennessee, as well as Patton University on the West Coast. So there are all kinds of doors then that open for our youth and our children's areas as well, for them to expand. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm all for the young people coming in here. But what about us older people? Jamie, my mother had started this church. And this is very hard on me and my sister. My mother, my grandmother helped start this church. And through some of these changes, I have been hurt very badly. You don't know what this means to me. I'm having a difficult time handling this.
Well, change is difficult.
Yeah, but what about us older people?
Well, and I'll address that for you. And Pastor Oldfield will speak to that as well.
I have felt we have been pushed back in a corner.
Sure.
I felt like we've been abandoned.
Sure.
And I just feel like we've been lost in the whole
what
situation.
What we're going to do is connect our elders or our seniors group to leadership that will connect with them. Because the truth is, Margie, you and I don't have much in common other than Jesus. Outside, our demographics are different, our age group is different, our culture is different. So you're not going to connect much with me, and I'm probably not going to connect much with your likes and your desires and things that you want out of life. But now, if this is the will of the church again and the will of the Lord, we're going to be able to connect you to that leadership and introduce you to a much larger group, because they do things all the time. And we can combine that and connect that. But you got to think, your mom and your grandma, they weren't always older. They were young too.
So was I too.
That's right. And you were a young lady growing up in a church, and and so our ages change, our decades change. I'm in my 5th decade, God help me, and it's just a part of life. And I have recognized that one of the areas that have struggled in this church has been our seniors group. But now we have an opportunity where we can connect with another group that has the leadership in place to help build that ministry.
Margie, I hear you, and I feel your heart, and I can understand it.
This whole thing's heartbreaking to me.
Sure. Well, let me say this. I can relate a little better to it, because in the eyes of some, I have become an older person, and I can tell you, in the 34 years of ministry, I have seen enormous changes in church. I told somebody the other day at the church where I pastor now, I don't personally like everything about it. And if I was going to design a church that was specifically the way I wanted it, it would look a lot different. But where I pastor, because we're trying to reach everybody. That means that there's some things that somebody may like and somebody may like, and somebody over here may not like that as much. And I have always had a respect for history, and for your family obviously has been very, very much engaged in the process of the church, and I can only imagine, just the last number of changes that the church has gone through, how difficult that could be. When I look at older folks, I don't look at them as people who are just blending into the wall and their days are long since gone. I think the Bible teaches us that there's much that the young can learn from the old, and we can define old or young in whatever numbers we want to. But my point is, the church where I pastor in Columbus, we have a very vibrant senior adult ministry. They travel and sing. They go have cottage prayer meetings. They just all over. They take trips to the Amish country. They just do a plethora of things. And one of the things that's recently happened, they came together with our young adult group, and I have continued. This was probably about 3 weeks ago, a month ago. I've continued to hear the reports of the blessings from both groups. And when I came in here this morning, I marveled at the young people, but then I marveled at some of the not so young people. And that's a healthy church. And so I guess what I would say to you, there's been a lot of change. And as we, if it is the desire of the church to move into this relationship that we're talking about, I would see, and my prayer would be, that the ministry of the senior adults would flourish and would blossom and would be strengthened, not to push them to the side. Now, when I sit and come into settings like this, I did not grow up hearing songs like we heard today. I didn't grow up with the lighting systems that we have today. When I can remember going to church. You'd walk in and you'd flip a light switch, and the lights came on, and you had church. Culture's changed a lot, and in the church where I pastor, we've got a big curtain up there that somebody bought the church. It cost a lot of money. It's got lights all in it. I don't even know if it's a micro. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's there. And it's got thousands of lights in it, in the curtain, and they change colors, and they can be programmed to change colors with the other. My minister of music, out of his mind came these big boxes with lights in them, and they're all programmed together. The lights out here, the intelligent lights, all of those things, that's not my cup of tea personally. But I can tell you, when somebody that's under the age of 40 or maybe 30 walks into that room, they just go crazy. They love it. They can connect to it. It's their times. And so what I have discovered, and what I've talked to, I went on the platform Easter Sunday. I don't sing. Every once in a while, because my voice changes every week, every day. But that Sunday, I just felt like singing At the Cross, an old hymn. And, well, we don't do it every Sunday, but we did it that Sunday.
Not at all anymore.
I'm sorry?
What happened to these old hymns? Are we going to bring them back, or are they going to be buried in the dirt?
Well, I don't know that anyone would bury them in the dirt, but my point is, I think the goal has to be, now, in Columbus, we have found our happy place as it relates to the hymns, as it relates to some of the older things. And we'll have to seek to find that here, because I think the goal is to have a diverse congregation. But one of the things that I will say, statistically, to reach somebody for Christ while they're young is your best opportunity. Some of the older folks that have been around for a long time have heard all the preaching. They've had the experiences. They've walked in the faith for a long, long time. And those people, at least folks that I know in Columbus, because we've been through this road, they have come to the place where they understand that they're on their way to heaven. They love God, they love people, and it's their time to reach out to a present-day harvest and to people that are in a much different culture than you and I were in when we were younger.
But you know there's older people out there need Christ too.
That's absolutely. That's absolutely. And again, in our church, that's why we have a very vibrant and active senior adult ministry. So I guess to answer your question, you have to, through dialogue and through interaction and through, I think, implementing ministries to senior adults that's going to begin to minister to some needs that they may have and meet those needs. And then as you do that, you begin to analyze and try to figure out what else needs to be done. But that's a process of communication and interaction. But the senior adults, in my opinion, ought to be a very valuable asset to the church. But the senior adults also have to understand, some of those hymns when they came along were radical to the Christian world at the time. And these are things that just constantly change.
What is wrong with singing the hymns once in a while?
I don't know that anything's wrong with singing them every once in a while.
Other churches do it. I mean, they.
Well, Margie, we do it too. We do it too. Sometimes. Well, we have done it. We do it on occasion. Sometimes you're not here. Sometimes you're not here when we do it. Because of health reasons or whatever else is going on at your home or in your life. So just because you haven't been here when we've done it doesn't mean we never do it.
Those hymns have got such a fantastic message to them.
Sure, all the worship songs do.
Victory in Jesus, the old rugged cross.
Sure.
He arose.
Those are songs I grew up on.
I didn't hear him sing any of that at Easter time.
Those are songs I grew up in. We grew up. The church I had growing up in Columbus was a redback hymnal church. But as Pastor Oldfield said, cultures do change too. So we're trying to do things that connect as well with a changing culture, and that's still pointing them to Christ.
Well,
Margie, I think if again what we're talking about here today, if the church chooses to go forward in this relationship, that's a conversation that we can have.
And I've already spoken with, his name is Pastor Joe Ettinger. I've already spoken with Joe. I've got a great relationship with him to let him know that it's our desire to connect that group with our seniors group. So, anyone else? Yes. Amen. Amen.
It's not about us. It's about them. It's about reaching people for God. Praise His name.
We never would have known you were Carol's sister. I'll tell you. Amen.
It's a praying community. I know that. Because Carol's a prayer. We're friends. Every day we go to prayer gatherings. This is a praying community that serves God, and things are changing. People's lives are being changed by the power of God. Prayer changes things. Prayer changes people. Praise His name.
Sure. Amen. Anyone else?
I just want to say something that it's kind of, God has changed my life and my family's life, and it's not what I would have chosen. But if I believe in God and I trust in God, then I know that this road that He's taken me down is part of His plan and part of His purpose. And I just trust Him. I believe in Him, and I know that what He's doing is for His glory. And I think of that in this situation too. This may not be what we vision. Some of us may not vision it. But if this is what God is doing now, then we got to just trust Him and follow Him. Sure. And, I don't like this path that God's taken me on, but if it's going to draw me closer to Him and it's going to better my family and my relationship with Him, then I'm going to trust Him and believe in Him.
All right.
Pastor Oldfield, I sure appreciate the presence and the way you have addressed this situation. I'm very grateful for that. One thing that I haven't heard real clearly is that, yes, we want to be an evangelistic church. We want to be a prayerful church. We want to be a worshipful church. But I think more than anything, we ought to be a biblical church. And as I look through the scriptures, I would just ask that you address, I never saw Paul start a church in one town and take that church to another town. He started with a new group of people, and that became an individual church. The Church of Colossae, or the Church of Ephesus, or the Church of Philippi. And I just sit here struggling just a little bit. I sure like you. I could sit underneath you, I'm sure, very easily. But I want to hear that from a biblical perspective. How does one church from one town govern a church in another town? And what kind of church government do we have in this proposal?
Well, I think obviously Paul appointed elders in churches that he had oversight of, that were not this particular design or this particular way. I don't know that the Bible specifically specifies that. I don't know that makes it unbiblical to do the work of God in a church. You have the church at Jerusalem had a lot of oversight over places beyond and outside of Jerusalem. And I did a church, this particular issue like this happened in a church. I don't know that I know that happened in the church. I don't know that this particular, what we're talking about doing, conflicts with Scripture, I guess is my point. There's a lot of things that go on today that the Scripture is fairly silent on, that I don't know is a conflicting. I think one of the issues of the day when Paul was doing ministry, they didn't have the world of technology that we have to stay connected in two different towns. Had they had that, you may have been reading about issues and times and things like that. Our world has changed a lot since then. They didn't do a lot of things with videos and videoing from one location to the other as well, but they didn't have the access to that technology that allows us to do some of the things that we're doing today. So I guess I hear your heart and I hear your question, and I cannot state you a particular place in the book of Acts or in the New Testament where this particular relationship took place. But I guess my response to that would be they didn't have the technology that we have to do those kind of things. Somebody the other day was talking about this, the process of videoing churches. So somebody planted a church in Timbuktu somewhere, and instead of someone being right there on the platform preaching, they showed a video of another man in a different location preaching. And the conversation was, well, is that biblical? Is that of God? Well, if Paul had the opportunity to be able to speak in 25 different locations at the same time when he was doing ministry, would he have done that? I would have to think that he would have. I would have to think that Jesus would have done that. But it's a different day. We have, and the technology today can be very bad and very negative, or we can seize it and do good and positive things with it. Today, every Sunday in Columbus, we live stream 2 services. And on average, there are 200 people from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, some in Columbus, some in different parts of the nation. We have several people in Russia, for whatever reason, that watch our live stream every Sunday. Well, did they do that in the New Testament? I never read anything about that, but they didn't have the technology to do that. We've had people saved through the live stream. We've been able to minister to people through the live stream. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand the context of your question, but I guess, the structure that we have today allows us to be able to do something like that, which they didn't have in that time, I guess would be my response to that.